absolutely love, love, love the series. I can't wait to see more. I want to get up and travel. So my question is, what was the most challenging aspect of capturing the unique ecosystem of the Americas? And how did you balance storytelling with scientific accuracy? Because it was so good.
Well, the biggest challenge is that it is an enormous place. And one of the appeals of doing the series was simply because of the scale and the variety and the diversity of habitats and animals on that place. So the biggest challenge is that every time you go and do a film, go and shoot something, it's an expedition. It's effectively like a filming expedition, and every single one has to be bespoke for that habitat, that animal, that location. And so you can't. There's no one size fit all. So it's the logistics team on this series. I don't know how they did it. It's extraordinary. And I've done a lot of these shows, and I think this is by far the most challenging one that I've worked on in terms of the range of logistics. I'm sorry, I can't remember what the second part of the question.
Okay.
It's been a long night. I've been talking for about 6 hours.
It's fine. You've got the science and the story, balancing those two. Yeah. Right.
Right. Well, we're all scientists, basically. I mean, we're filmmakers, but fundamentally, we all come from a little bit of a science background. So the science is very important to us, but not for its own sake. I mean, the success of this, if it's successful, this will be because I designed it to be more of an experience. It feels like a super safari, a journey to the best places you could ever go if you had unlimited time, money, and friends. And so what I want is when people go to these places, they're immersed in the challenges that the animals face, and they empathize, and they see their lives in the lives of those animals. And by doing that, I think they subliminally get excited and involved in it, and actually they learn a huge amount. Now, they don't learn necessarily how fast it runs or how heavy it is or how tall it is, but what they do learn is how it survives, what the challenges are, what the environmental challenges, what the ecological challenges are, how two birds court with each other. It's much more of a deep learning rather than a factual learning. And I think that's a more powerful learning. I think it's a more important learning. I think because you start to look at the world with your eyes open in a different way. And that's certainly what Tom Hanks, who narrates it, what he loved about it, what I think he brought to it is that sense of, come with me, let me show you something, let me tell you something, let me experience this with me, rather than sit back and take notes. I'm going to tell you about the size of this animal. So hopefully that's how we've got the balance.
Yes, it did, because I felt exactly that. I just wanted to be there with them. It was so personal. It was so close. I absolutely just love it. And I can't wait to see the rest of the series. So thank you for brilliant work. Brilliant, brilliant work. Thank you so much. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. When I come to America, I'm going to look for your channel, because that sounds like a great channel.
Thank you so much. All right. Have a great day. Thanks.
Joe, if you want to ask your question next, and then Gig, we'll go to you after that.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for chatting with us today. I've seen the first 2 episodes of The Americas. Absolutely fascinating and awesome. I was wondering if you could compare putting together different segments, right? So like in the first hour, the Atlantic coast, you have a segment on the cicadas. In the second hour, the Mexico show, you have a segment on orcas and dolphins. I'm assuming that the production scale of producing those 2 segments are vastly different, but I was wondering if you could walk me through that. How much is difference in the pre-planning? How much difference in the scale and the actual production? How many days, weeks, months does it take to get that final footage?
I'm going to just rewind a tiny bit, because how you end up with that variety of sequences. So when you're trying to tell the story of this entire supercontinent, there are millions of stories you could tell. So you have to make your selection right at the front, and that's like casting in a movie. You start off with a whole load of filters. You want scary stories. You want emotional. You do it from a sort of feel, scary, brave, funny. Then you say, well, actually, there's another set of filters, which is what type of behavior: courtship behavior, hunting behavior, mating behavior, nest building behavior, whatever it is. So that's another set of filters. Then you have a kind of an animal type filter: big charismatic orca, as you say, little bugs, furry, nice cute bear cubs, another set of filters. Then another one is newness. Has anybody seen this before? And anyway, so you have your 100 or 500 ideas, and you start jiggling them around until those filters, and eventually out of that, 100 or so will stack, all those filters will stack in perfect position. And then you say, right, that's the story we're going to go for. So the reason why the cicadas was we wanted to tell a story that was in your backyard, was about an epic journey, but of a bug. Also something that was completely weird, that it spends 17 years underground as a little cocoon, and then it spends 3 days above ground. It just blows your mind. Then at the other end of the orca, one of the most powerful predators on the planet. How does it behave? Intelligent. How is it used? So do you mean, so that's, do you see what I mean? That's how you choose those. Now, when it comes to the logistics of it, still you'd be surprised how similar they are actually. But one is, we're going to be shooting this in about 15 square feet. And one of them, we're going to be shooting in 15 square miles of ocean. One of them means we're going to have to hire a boat and film and boat crews for a month. And the dollar meter's going brrr. Whereas the other one was saying, well, we can do this. We know these things are coming out on this day. I mean, it's still not, it's not cheap, but do you know what I mean? It's a slightly less scary scale of resource costs. The difference is that the photography of the cicadas has to be incredibly carefully planned, because they're very difficult to film because they're tiny, and to make them feel anything other than just a buggy, horrible buggy thing, to make them feel epic is quite challenging photographically. Orcas, they're just epic. So, you know, they kind of do their own epic for you.
Thank you.
All right, and then we have Gig, and then Melissa, you're on deck, and then Jordan.
Mike, hey, congratulations on this series. I always love to watch this kind of stuff, and you've done so many series, including Planet Earth. But my question is, how do you keep this fresh for yourself and for the audiences around the world? Because you must go through thousands of hours of footage yourself.
I mean, it's a good question. I have been doing this a long time, and funny enough, this might sound weird, but doing this keeps it fresh. When I'm talking to people like yourselves and telling you the stories and getting the reaction, makes me think this is worthwhile. People enjoy this stuff, and it changes their. I mean, when you can do things that actually impacts people, and when I say changes their lives, that might sound a bit grand, but they see the world in a different way after having seen these projects. That is a very powerful kind of refresher of the enthusiasm. The other thing is that people have often said when I start one of these series, and not least my own family said, why are you doing another? You've just done it, or why are you doing another one? And then you haven't you filmed everything? And then you think, oh gosh, maybe we have. And then within about a week of starting, you think, amazing new story. Never heard of that. I didn't know that existed. And it's that satisfying, that curiosity and that sort of surprise in me is what keeps me. But it makes me think, well, if I'm excited and enthusiastic about these news stories, then hopefully the audience will. And then the last part of the question is, and keeping it fresh to the audience, because I do think it is getting harder and harder, because there is a lot of whatever people rather disparaging call them nature docs. I hate that, but these sorts of projects, there's a lot of it around, and there's some stuff that's probably not that interesting, and hopefully there's stuff that's really good. How do you differentiate that? And I think that's the biggest challenge, is trying to find things that give you a particular personality or flavor that stands out. And there's lots of ways of doing that. One, get Tom Hanks to narrate it, get Hans Zimmer to write the music, hopefully put the BBC Studio Natural History Unit stamp on it. But also I think this show, by doing it for NBC, nobody's ever done a national broadcaster before. And to tell these stories to this audience, which is an audience that probably doesn't normally watch this kind of shows, it's been both an extraordinary experience and a challenge, and an interesting one. And that opportunity to be able to tell people that I say don't normally watch it is very exciting. But it meant that we had to think about how to refresh the approach. And I think if you watch it, I hope it feels different from a planet. I mean, I'm very proud of Planet Earth, of course, but I think it feels different from that in that it might have the same kind of photographic ambition, but the way it's told, especially with Tom, is much more of a, come with me, let me tell you about this. Look, and let me show you this. This is really cool. You're not going to believe this. Rather than, this is the most amazing, it's a kind of less, I'm not suggesting for any minute that either is better or worse, but I hopefully feels a slightly different experience rather than a standard doc. We shall see. That's what I've tried to do, and hopefully that's what comes across.
Well, you keep on making it. I will keep on watching it. Thank you very much.
Good man.
All right. Next question is Melissa, and then Jordan, you're on deck, and then Steve.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes, hi. I thought I've watched it, all three of them, all three episodes, and I thought it was amazing. It was very poetic, it was very storytelling. And the animals were actually more like characters instead of using typical documentary language, like such that they mate, you've got them, oh, they're falling in love, the love language, the love dance. How did you choose which animals that you were going to create this, and how long did you follow them around to know which would be the right characters? Because you use words like hero in our story.
Yeah. So first thing to say is, I think I've always done part of this, or I've always tried to do, which is to characterize it, is to go tell stories about individuals, because I think as a biologist, I mean, I was a biologist before I was a filmmaker. If you watch animals, you realize they are individuals. They have character. They have different, effectively, personalities, which affects how they live their lives. And for a viewer, and for a storyteller, and for a receiver of a story, I don't want to tell you a story about lions. I want to tell you a story about that lion. I don't want to tell you a story about owls. I want to tell you a story about that owl. Because as soon as you do that, you're engaged in the trials and tribulations, the struggles of what's going on in that animal's life, which does two things. One, it's empathetic. It connects you with their lives because there's a lot of parallels. We are, after all, animals. And the second thing is, it still teaches you, you still learn about the biology of that animal. Because if I said owls, when they mate, make a woo woo noise, that's a fact. But I can also tell you this owl, when he mates, has to make a woo woo noise. So you're still getting the same information, but you're doing it through an individual's struggles and strivations. So you are rooting for them, hopefully, and you share the successes and failures. So that's why we do that. And then in choosing them, it's, as I said to the gentleman at the beginning, it's about kind of filtering. You want to have a love story. Now, the language of love story, I mean, I probably wouldn't use that language under normal circumstances, but in this particular representation, and with Tom, it felt that the informality of what we were trying to do, which is this kind of, I'm with you, come with my, I'm going to hold your hand and take you and show you. How would you describe that yourself if you were there? You say, look at this guy, he's trying to get a girlfriend, You know, that's the language you'd use, rather than say, he's trying to find a mate on the 3rd of January. And, it's not that kind of delivery. And whether you like, whether people like it or not
I think, yes. No, it's wonderful. And I liked it, that made it more entertaining, and it was more relatable than
well, that's the thing. And I think relatability, one of the underlying messages, or one of the messages in the wrong way, one of the underlying ambitions of this, as well as showing wonder and learning and all that, it's also to engender care. You have this most extraordinary country. We're outsiders, we Brits, it's an extraordinary continent. We look and think to ourselves, this is the most amazing place on planet Earth. This supercontinent is, the variety and what you have is unbelievable. But we also think to ourselves, do you actually realize what you've got? Are you aware of how extraordinary this is? And if you don't, are you going to look after it? So what we're trying to do is say, remind people, open their eyes, so they go, wow, this is in my backyard. This is extraordinary. I love this. I care for this. I want to treasure this as well as just celebrate it, so that I can enjoy it. This is you speaking, and my children and my grandchildren and my nephews and aunts and all the rest of it. So that's another part of why we want to take this approach, to that empathetic approach, so that people care and want to protect.
All right, and
I
up
think-
next, oh, sorry. Up next is Jordan, and then Steve, you're on deck.
Hi there, Mike. Yeah, thanks for taking the question.
Hello.
So I think it goes without saying that artificial intelligence is going to change the wildlife and natural history game, but exactly how, is up for debate. I don't think anyone knows at this stage. So a kind of two-part question. Do you see the rise of some of these extremely advanced generative AI tools as an opportunity or a challenge for wildlife producers? And then kind of the part two is, imagine if the Americas was greenlit today. Do you think it would have been produced in a very different way, or would you go about it, do you think, in the same way as you did over the past 5 years?
Can I answer the second question first?
Of course, yes.
So if it was greenlit today, would I do it the same way? I think I would, because I think fundamentally storytelling is as old as humanity, and good storytelling and storytelling that gets you to care and be involved in character is a universal. And I think if you get it right, which I hope we have more often than not, it's going to be both an enjoyable, a fascinating, and an engaging experience. So I don't think I would have changed very much. I mean, some of the technology that we started with 5 years ago is now developed even further, and so probably we'd be even more ambitious, and we wouldn't have had COVID, which would have been another plus, which definitely was a bit of a challenge. So I think the answer to that is, yeah, I think it would probably be, and I definitely have Tom Hanks again. If I could, I'd definitely have Hans Zimmer again. So yeah, I probably asked for 12 rather than 10, because there's a couple of places, the hotspots I would have liked to have gone to, which we couldn't. Going back to the generative AI, I literally have no idea.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't think anyone does.
I wish I did. All I would say is sort of what go back to the reason why I want to ask the first bit of the question, second bit of the question first, is that what AI can do, we'll have to see. But what I hope is that authenticity will become an even greater, even more valuable currency. And so something like this project, which you can, however you stamp it or kite mark it, as we say in the UK, as authentic, I don't know. But the fact that it will be, or that people will hopefully believe it's authentic, will bring people to it, because I think there'll be so much stuff where people are confused and muddled about what they're seeing. If they can be sure that it genuinely is authentic, I think it will have a massively value. It's a bit like vinyl, and it's the same sort of, I mean, it's not quite the same, but and I mean, in a way, I'm glad I'm at the autumn of my career rather than the spring of my career, because I think it's going to be challenging. Just sorry everybody else, but just a quick aside. One of my colleagues he's one of the consultants on another project working. He's a big internet geek. He said that when he goes onto the internet, if he types in ocelot, which is a type of cat, for images, 90% of the images that come up are AI generated. And he said that most people have no idea. He knows, because he's an expert, that they're not. And he said, it's scary, but also he said, it makes me feel, this is him speaking, he says, it makes me feel quite good, because my value is going to increase, because I'm one of the few people who can tell, and people are going to, I'm going to become a guru. And I think that is going to be interesting. The rise of the expert, the human being who can tell what is and isn't AI, is going to be probably a good career move. And on that philosophical note,
yeah, thanks very much.
Yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't help answer better on the AI. I wish I need to get my head around it a bit more, but at the moment I'm too busy doing real stuff. But I will eventually have to deal with AI.
That was a great answer. Thank you.
All right, next up is Steve, and then Joe, I see you have another question, so you'll be on deck.
Hi, Mike. Out of all the animals showcased in the series, do you have a favorite?
Yes, but ask me tomorrow and it'll be a different one. But today, my favorite is the burrowing owl, the little male burrowing owl in San Marco in Florida. Do you know that? Have you seen? You probably haven't seen the story, but I'm going to quickly tell you the story because I think it's emblematic of the series as well. So these little burrowing owls, their natural habitat is on the grass plains because they need this short grass, which is kept really short by the grazing animals like the bison. They've moved and migrated into gardens in Florida because the people who mow their lawns so enthusiastically keep the grass super short, and it makes the perfect habitat for these owls, and it's quite sandy soil, so they can make their burrows. Now the males dig these burrows in the hope of enticing a female, and they're very cute. They're about this sort of height. They're only about this sort of height, and they build these burrows very proudly, and they stand on the burrows. And they go, woo, 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 make this lovely sort of little slightly bouncing thing, and they with their wings, and they call this woo woo call, and the females as they fly by get attracted in, and they come and if they get lucky, get mate with them. Our story, when we join our story, there's lots of these owls all over the place, and they're all paired off, and they're all loving, and they are actually quite loving. They put their wings around each other. There's one male who's sitting there forlornly going, ooh, ooh, ooh. No females, and he's looking, and he literally looks depressed. And then we spend the next couple of minutes, day in, day out, woo, 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 woo. And then we have time lapse of the sun coming up, the moon coming up, traffic going past, people delivering the newspapers, day after day after day, cut back to him, woo, woo, woo. Nothing happens. Eventually, just as it's about to give up hope, he suddenly looks up and hears a female flying over, and he goes, woo, 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 goes into sort of hyperdrive, and this female circles and comes and lands on the lawn about 20 feet from him, and she looks at him, and he looks at her, and she looks back at him, and then she does this big wink, and then the course of true love comes together, and he gets the girl. Now you can imagine Tom Hanks telling that story. It's like Sleepless in Seattle, and that's my favorite animal today.
Thank you.
All right, and then next, Joe has another question, and then Melissa.
Just on that, just to finish that, I showed that sequence at Cannes at the film market there, and I don't know if any of you have ever been there, but it's full of the most hard-nosed, impress me type film buyers, program buyers, and I showed that sequence to them, and spontaneous applause and spontaneous cheers at the end. That's a hard audience to please. So if you can get that from them, I think that's probably going to be a winner, that sequence. Sorry,
Mike, we just heard your favorite animal story. I'm going to piggyback off that and ask, what was your favorite episode? You have 10 episodes of the Americas. What was your favorite region and why? And if you had 12 hours instead of 10, what are the regions that you wish you had time to explore more?
Well, I think in the end, I'm about to go there next week, in 2 weeks' time. The Andes, because I didn't know anything about the Andes, and I thought of the Andes as being just a kind of a big mountain with nothing, maybe a few bears and maybe a few puma, and the variety of habitats and stories from that place, including that frog that freezes itself to death. It basically goes into suspended animation every night, and then frozen solid as a block, and then reanimates itself every day. That's extraordinary. The Atacama Desert that I think I might have mentioned earlier. There's an extraordinary salt flat lizard that does this incredible courtship and fight. It's just full of stories I'd never heard of, and it's a brutally wild place, and it feels like one of the last wildernesses. So I think that's amazing place. In terms of other places, I would have liked to have done another story in South America. I probably would have liked to have done. I would have liked to have split the Amazon. We kind of do the Amazon and the Pantanal as kind of one show. I think I would have split that in half because the Pantanal is the most amazing wetlands. And then I probably would have tried to find something in Central America. I mean, Costa Rica is, I don't know if you know Costa Rica, an incredible part of the world, and probably would have done something in that sort of area, because I would have quite liked to have spun in some of those ancient, the Mayan Aztec civilizations, because they had some really interesting relationships with nature. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, and then we are running out of time. So Melissa, this is going to be our last question.
Okay. Hi, so it's absolutely beautiful footage. Would this ever be, looks like you're shooting it, could it be, would it be visible for IMAX at some point? It's just stunning.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Well, in fact, we have been in kind of negotiation or in conversation with NBC about making a theatric version of it, but I think at the moment, I think the commercials don't quite add up for that. Not because of the quality. I just think, the industry is all is quite, isn't it? Financially, it's challenging at the moment. I think the general industry. So I think it certainly could absolutely stand up on a big screen. We'll have to wait and see. I'd love it to be. I think it would be an amazing IMAX or just amazing theatrical. I just think if you could get that wraparound sound and that real, totally immersive experience, I think it would be, it would be great.
Yeah, no, I think that's the only thing can make it better to see it on IMAX, because it is just,
I agree.
It is just incredible what you've done, and the time lapse and the geysers exploding. It's just really beautifully done.
Well, the other thing I suppose it could do is you could go on the Apple Pro goggles or something like that. Whether you could do a VR version of it could be an amazing experience as well. But
Yes.
yeah. Well, thank you all very much indeed, and
Well,
thanks
thank
for being so enthusiastic. It's it makes it really lovely to hear your responses, and thank you very much.